The Russell Stover's Killer by the Prowler. As my fiance and I drive to our favorite restaurant to celebrate Valentine's Day, I turn on the radio and am immediately greeted with the local news breaking another murder.
This just in. The chocolate box killer strikes again. A young couple was found savagely murdered inside their vehicle earlier this morning outside their home. The killer's calling card was placed in the deceased male's lap, a circa 1980s dusty box of Russell Stover's chocolates. This brings the total number of deaths to 10. 10 loving couples whose flame has been snuffed out by this holiday madman. Police urge couples in any stage of their relationship to stay inside for the next 2 days until the holiday is over. Police patrols have been increased, but they don't know when the killer, also known as the chocolate box killer, or more recently, the Russell Stover's killer, might strike again. So if you're listening to this broadcast, and you and your significant other care for each other's well-being, please stay inside and stay safe. Good luck.
I turned off the radio in shock and disgust and turned to my fiancé. We stared at each other, not knowing what to do. She looked concerned, while I tried to keep a brave face to keep her comforted. We were minutes from the restaurant, so we decided to go ahead with our plans. We just have to keep a close eye out for trouble, be quick about our business, while also trying to enjoy ourselves and get home safely. As I'm saying all this to myself, it's beginning to sound more foolish. We should be taking our narrow asses back to the safety of our home. There's a killer out, a killer who's specifically targeting couples, and we're out here traipsing around like a couple of airheads from the same era the killer's chocolates are from. Careless 80s camp counselor moves that might get us killed. As we entered the restaurant, our decision felt even more foolish when we realized we were the only couples there, except for one other. An entire restaurant emptied except for us and another couple. The usual lively establishment felt dark and eerie. An originally planned romantic dinner now felt like a burden and needed to be rushed through. We were seated in our favorite booth, in the corner of the room, next to the fireplace, and we were greeted by our favorite waiter, Raoul. He, of course, asked for our order, but I could see in the corner of my eye him staring at us, as if he was in total shock that we were even there. Yeah, I know, I thought, but we're here, and we're going to make the best of it. We ordered our favorite meals, the eggplant parmesan for my love, and I ordered the chicken Alfredo, best Italian in the city, no bullshit. Raoul quickly placed our order, and we were left staring at each other across the table as we made small talk, dimly lit by the glow of the candle that adorned our centerpiece. I held her hand in mine, and we tried to drown out all the noise of the outside world and just focus on each other. No thoughts of killers or our eerie environment, not even the Italian classic love songs trying to set the mood. Sorry, Dean. Sorry, Frank. As we continued to wait for our food, we discussed our plans for the rest of the evening. Some movies and animalistic lovemaking would be how we ended our night, no matter what. As we were deep in conversation, however, I noticed the time was continuing to pass, with no food being brought out, not even a refill of our refreshments. I looked around and became disturbed when I didn't see a member of the staff in sight. No Raoul, none of the other waiters or busboys, or the manager. I became a little concerned at that point. It was only us and the other couple in the dining room, just 4 people in sight in the entire establishment. My heart began to sink when I suddenly remembered something from the early stages of these murders. A report that didn't mean much at the time, but sure is beating down the door of the holy shit we're fucked house now. In the beginning, it was reported that the killer left a message proclaiming his terror would continue until Valentine's Day night, ending at 11:59, or until he killed 14 victims, symbolizing the 14 days of Valentine's. Well, like I said in the car, the victim count is at 10, and there's 4 of us in here, and we haven't seen a soul who works here in at least 30 minutes. After telling my fiancé what I just realized and that we should get the hell out of here, we heard a loud commotion come from the back in the kitchen, pots clanging as they hit the ground, followed by a pained grunt as though someone had just been hit. I motioned to my fiancé to call the police, and as she did, a figure stood behind the kitchen doors, staring at us through the glass porthole. We tensed up as the figure made his way into the dining room, shrouded and carrying a meat cleaver and 2 boxes of old dusty Russell Stovers. He approached our tables. Our decisions must be clear and smart, I thought, as I was quickly thinking of a plan for me and my love to escape. I noticed the other couple head towards the back in the direction of the bathrooms. That is exactly the kind of shit we will not be doing. That couple just made the classic horror movie mistake. The white, blonde teenager alone in the house. Run upstairs or lock yourself in the bathroom instead of running out the front door, about to get a box of old Russell Stovers placed on your corpse type of mistakes. That's about to get these poor dumb bastards killed. So rest in peace, rogue restaurant couple, and your horrible 80s horror movie decisions. While you're getting yourself killed, we'll be escaping through the front door, getting rescued by the police that just arrived, then arresting the crazed killer while you're laying on the cold bathroom floor, breathing your last breaths. So thanks to smart, proper thinking, we survived the Russell Stovers killer and his box of old Dusties. Murder House by Dancing Ember. Blood spattered against the second-story window. She screamed. Jake grabbed her shoulders. Careful, Gina girl. Screamers die first. Liz rolled her eyes, taking another drag from her cigarette. Don't be an ass. Smoke faded into the winds, nipping at the people standing in line. Who am I kidding? She pulled him off Gina. I expect too much of you. Liz kissed him. Gina, sheltered, preppy, popular, had never been to a haunted house. Her other friends wouldn't approve, so she had to beg Liz. Liz didn't care what people thought. She admired that. Another person ran out of the house screaming. Must be good, Jake thought. He chugged his beer, crushed the can, and chucked it as they reached the entrance. It's party time, ladies. Gina was disgusted that she found him so hot. Heavy doors slammed behind them, shutting out soft moonlight, plunging them into darkness. Boo! Gina screamed again as Jake cackled. Liz slapped him, making him laugh harder. The cycle repeated with every horror inside the house. Skeleton stalkers. Gina freaked. Zombie butlers. Jake teased. Murder clowns. Liz scolded. The bloodied clowns were dancing around them, toy knives dull against the strobe lights. Guys, this blood looks like really real. Gina made a scared little duck face for Jake. Aw, look. Jake tickled her, Princess is scared. No. Gina pretended to fight back between giggle fits. Give it a rest. Liz wasn't into labels, so she told herself. He gave Liz his famous sexy stare. Come on, baby. Motioning like he'd been stabbed dramatically, he said, You know I'm dying to be with you. Liz tried not to smile. You're dumb. She pushed him into the clowns. Something glinted. Jake clutched his back, stumbled at the girls. Help! Liz put her hands on her hips. We're very scared. Jake tried steadying himself on the women. I'm not... He left sticky red trails on their clothes as he collapsed. Jake! Liz said. The clown skittered away. Liz checked Jake's pulse. Nothing. Fuck! We have to get out! Gina stared. So, this was real fear. Something so wrong she couldn't scream. Liz yanked her into action. We have to go! They bolted back the way they'd come. Another glint. Pain flashed across Gina's heel as she fell. A clown giggled. Skeletons and zombies emerged from the dark. Liz peeled Gina off the floor, narrowly avoiding gnashing teeth. Get up! But they moved slowly. Though the exit was in sight, the killers were closer, knives raised, teeth snarling, bones chattering. Gina knew what she had to do. She unlooped herself from Liz. At least one of them should make it out. What the hell do you think you're... Gina shoved Liz into the crowd of murderers. They fell upon her like sharks to chum. Stumbling out into the moonlight, Gina limped past the line of oblivious thrill-seekers, desperately pushing down the image in her mind. The look of betrayal that would haunt the rest of her days. I was charged for a murder committed before I was born. By Hura. It all started with a knock. Within seconds, I was on the floor with 2 police officers restraining me. As they stretched my hands behind my back and proceeded to read me my Miranda rights, I began to wonder what I had done. Thoughts began racing through my head. I wondered if I had been caught torrenting, or if I had accidentally hit something or someone with my car. None of those crimes seemed to correlate with the number of detectives searching my home. What could I have possibly done? After we had arrived at the police station, I would soon learn my fate. I was being charged with the 1984 murder of Sally McPherson. In 1984, a young girl born to immigrant parents, Sally McPherson, had been brutally murdered and assaulted in my neighborhood. The police had investigated the crime for some time before it went cold. That is, until the advancement in technology allowed them to thoroughly investigate the DNA. Being born shortly thereafter, in 1989, I had heard the rumors that had circulated the neighborhood as a child. Fear had always lingered throughout the vast majority of the individuals in the vicinity of the neighborhood. Was it a cult? Is there a serial killer living amongst us? Never could I have imagined that I would be at the center of the investigation. How could I, with the murder occurring years before I was born? DNA. Upon expressing my solid alibi of not being alive when the murder occurred, the police began to fabricate a story about how I had stolen someone else's identity and had been living a lie to protect myself. I had to be the murderer because the DNA found at the scene was a solid match to mine. I had fallen victim to a cold case without a suspect or motive because my DNA had matched. Nothing else seemed to matter to the detectives. They tried to coerce me into a confession. I was formally processed and remained in jail until yesterday, when my attorney was able to get me released on bail. My attorney, like myself, believed that I have a solid case. One cannot wonder enough how my DNA would end up at the scene of the murder before I was born. Since the day I was arrested, I have thought long and hard about the poor girl whose life ended in such misery. I feel for her parents, who expected nothing but prosperous opportunity when moving to the United States. Did they ever think that this could happen to their precious daughter? What would I do in their shoes? I have since questioned the legal system. How could it lead down a path so far-fetched that I am now being charged? I often wonder if there is a detective retiring that wants to close this case before he hangs up his badge. All of this is still to be learned. I have ignored the reporters that have lined the streets to my home. How would I address them? Would they believe me if I were to tell them? I couldn't have possibly committed this horrific crime. No one believes me. The last thing I want is to be featured on Dateline. I will leave it to my lawyer to determine how to proceed. But for now, I remain guilty until proven innocent in this corrupt legal system. Today, my lawyer has reached out to the DA and has informed me that they want to proceed with the case. They believe they have enough evidence to bring me to trial. This has me frightened beyond belief. What if I go to jail for this? I will continue to fight for my innocence and work to bring rest to this decades-old mystery. Miss Pickles by Sunshine Dreaming. My father and I sat in silence at the kitchen table, his fork clinking against the plate as he ate. "Where's your mother tonight?" I gave him a hard stare. "Step-mother? Who knows?" My mother's death left a void in our family that my father and I struggled to fill. We just don't know how to relate to each other without her. Of course, Aunt Susan hadn't made things any easier. My mother's body was barely cold in the ground when her sisters started sniffing around. With one eye on his land and the other on his money, she had charmed her way right into my father's heart and his bed. I'd been furious when he'd married her within the year. He may have been fooled, but I wasn't. I saw her for what she really was. Still, I acknowledged Dad had his own reasons for marrying her. For one thing, Aunt Susan was beautiful. She was younger, thinner, and prettier than Mom had ever been. Mom had been lovely in her own way, but farm life had left her rough around the edges. Aunt Susan was young, with milky skin and baby blue eyes. But Susan's beauty hid a sour disposition. She was prone to mood swings and violent jealousies over the simplest of glances. Eventually, he realized his mistake, but by then it was too late. Susan barely took notice of me. When she did, she went out of her way to turn a simple task into a cruel joke. This week, she demanded I slaughter Miss Pickles. True, we typically slaughtered a pig this time of year. And yes, I had done it before. The problem was that Miss Pickles wasn't just any pig. She was my pig. I won first place with her at the county fair. I felt like I only had one option. I had to kill her. The slaughter went about as well as expected. It's always unpleasant business. I knocked her unconscious with a shovel and chained her up. She was heavier than I expected. I wasted no time slitting her throat. Her blood sprayed all over me, coating my apron and pooling on the floor. After she bled out, I made the initial cuts down the center and across the groin, carefully removing the intestines so they didn't rupture. On the inside, everyone looks the same. She was no different than any of the other animals we'd slaughtered over the years. Are you sure she didn't say where she was going? Dad's question snapped me back to the table. I thought of all those cuts of meat sitting in the freezer. I don't think she's coming to dinner. Outside, Miss Pickles squealed happily as she rooted in the trough with the other pigs. Their teeth gnashed on hard gristle. That's the thing about pigs. They'll eat anything. Even Aunt Susan. Teenagers by Random Claude. But I don't want to, I shout. I didn't mean to raise my voice, but I was just so angry. I don't yell at you, so don't yell at me, young man. My stepmom lies. This is not up for debate. She has always been ridiculous with her demands, but this is a new level. It isn't even a demand, it's a statement. There's nothing I can do, and hardly anything I can say. Please, just listen. No, my choice is final. It isn't your choice. I'm supposed to consent to it. I'm the adult here. You don't get to make these decisions. Your brain isn't fully developed. I'm 16. I think I'm old enough to know whether I want to live. Don't be selfish. Think of all the starving children. Think of what a difference you'll make. As if she ever cared about any children. Pretending she only wants to do good is just typical, really. My death wouldn't mean much of anything to anyone but her. She loves preaching on and on about the importance of population control, sounding like one of those old government PSAs from the 2070s. You only want me to do this because you'll get paid. I tell it like it is. Lies, lies, lies. I'm only getting 3/4 of the pay, so that they'll sedate you first. Nice and painless. See? If I can be selfless, so can you. Comparing my life to a couple $100 aside, I hope that comment doesn't mean what I think it does. You already made the appointment? Yes, she said calmly. It's today at 4. We'll leave for the clinic in a few hours. No more arguing before then, or I'll cancel the sedatives. The clinic. Way back when the population crisis hit its peak, they built those things everywhere. Voluntary euthanasia was sold as the best, most honorable thing to do. The population plummeted back to stability. Nearly 3 decades later, the clinics are still around. And for whatever reason, the cash rewards are still up. My stepmom loves that clinic. She fawns over it every time we pass by. It's where her husband, my dad, gave up his life. My older stepsister did the same, only a year back. But at least then she was 18. Euthanizing minors only technically requires the consent of a legal guardian, not that of the child. What bullshit. Don't look so mad, she chimes in after a few uncomfortable seconds. And don't cry. That won't help anything. Tears in my eyes, I storm up to my room. Ugh, teenagers, I hear her say to herself from the stairwell. That's the 13th one yet. Why are they always like this? She watches me eat. Author unknown. She's been with me for nearly 2 years now, just standing there in the corner of my eye, almost immaterial, as she whispers in my ear, "Don't eat, don't eat, don't eat." I can't make out much of her, just enough to know that she is, and that her hair is so tangled and matted it's impossible to tell how long it is. But I guess it doesn't really matter who she is or how she looks. The point is, she's always there, and I can't seem to get rid of her. If I don't eat the food my stepmother gives me, she's there watching. If I eat my meals, she's there again, harassing me and telling me to stop. It's always, "Don't eat, don't eat, don't eat." She never says anything else, but she's everywhere. She often follows me to the bathroom. I catch glimpses of her in the mirror while I'm getting dressed and ready for my day. She follows me to school and work, standing about a foot behind me, her breath warming the back of my neck. No one else seems to be able to see her or hear her, though. Not even my family. My sister Leah is 10 and far smarter than I was at her age. She does extremely well in school and seems to be pretty popular from what I can tell. Good for her, I guess. I can't really relate. Early on, when I first started being visited, I tried telling Leah about the presents, but she didn't believe me. She thought I was pulling her leg. All she said was, "Leave me alone, Kelly. I have homework to do." Even though the presence was right behind Leah, whispering to her, too. I'm honestly too afraid to tell my dad anything, and my stepmother just brushed me off, as usual. Either way, neither of them seem to be able to see anything. My father usually works long hours and often misses dinner. My stepmother never sits with us at the table. She always sits on her own in the living room, curled up in front of the TV with a bottle of wine. So it's always me, Leah, and her. I've learned to ignore the thing. I eat when I'm hungry and don't eat when I'm not hungry. If everyone else in the house and in my life has it that simple, then I'm not going to allow her to ruin my life. Ignoring her works, for the most part. It doesn't really stop her chance when I'm eating, and it most definitely doesn't make her go away when I'm not. But I feel better at least, more in control. Sometimes she puts things in my food, out of spite, I assume. I've caught her a few times, peeling bits of rotted skin from her bony fingers and letting them fall over my meals. Sometimes it's chunks of her hair. I don't even try eating when this happens. My food goes directly into the bin. My stepmother always nags at me about the wasted food in the trash, and my sister is always lauded as the good daughter for clearing up her plate. But that's not really news to me. My sister has always been better. Over the last few weeks, however, things have gotten weird with Leah. I guess that's really why I'm writing this. Leah stopped joining us at the table for dinner, and from what I overhear of our parents' arguments, her grades have dropped dramatically. Leah just sits in her room, laying still in her bed, and staring at the corners of her ceiling. I tried to talk to her yesterday. I tried to ask her if the presents might be at fault, But Leah just looked at me, her pale face completely expressionless. After only a few seconds, she broke eye contact with me and went right back to looking at the walls. I'm really worried about her, but I'm not so sure what I can do, or if there's even anything I can do. I can't even help myself anymore. I have the same gaunt, tired look on my face as well. All I hear all day long is, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. I wonder if Leah now hears it, too. The perfect anniversary celebration. Whining, dining, and poisoning. She's all smiles now, with her $100 bottle of champagne and $60 lobster. But by the time she has finished dessert, that smile will be wiped off her face. I didn't want to poison her food, but she poisoned mine first. Herself and Tom, my so-called best friend. I found the messages. She forgot to delete them. This time, it has to happen tonight, she said. The plane tickets are bought, and I already cleaned his bank account. I'm just waiting on you. I'll bring it around tomorrow when he goes to work. Just put it in his dinner. He will never expect it, he replied. I will, and thanks for helping me out like this. I know it's not easy with him being your best friend and all, but just think of how happy we're going to be. It's our dream. I know, but I'm going to miss him. I'm not surprised that they were running off together. They had become very close lately, with their private jokes. They didn't think I heard the whispers or saw their guilty smirks, but I did. She has finished her main course now and keeps telling me to eat up, but I told her my stomach was upset and insisted she started dessert without me. I don't know how things got this bad between us, any of us, and if I thought there was another way out, I would do it. But I can't just let her get away with this. All my money is gone, out of the country, and I won't be getting it back, I checked. Serves me right for having a shared bank account. She even gave a notice to our landlord. I found the letters, so I'm homeless. I think she suspects that I know there is something wrong. Every time she looks at my food, she gets more and more irritated, and she has barely said a word in the last 10 minutes. Despite everything she did to me, I still love her, and I couldn't imagine myself without her. That's why I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. And eat. Her smile is coming back now that she sees me eating. The bitch. I want to tell her I put poison in her food too, but I'm going to wait until it kicks in. I was never a big fan of lobster, but it seems fitting as a last meal. Wait, there's something inside. It's a key. Why is she smiling like that? What does she mean she bought our dream house? Oh, shit. That's where the money is gone? And there's more, she says. What's this she put in front of me? Oh, please, God, no, no. That can't be what I think it is. Please say it's not. It is. And it has 2 blue lines. We're gonna be a family, she says. The nanny. Recently, several journals were unearthed from some of the most prominent families and households of the New York area during the late 1800s in preparation of my research of the famed poisoner Annie Tremantle. Here are a few of the excerpts. Sir Reginald Bartholomew, banker, January 16th, 1883. With the sudden death of my lovely wife on our travels to America, I arrived with my daughter to our new home in New York, shattered and completely heartbroken. My task at the present moment is to find a proper nanny to care for my daughter during days while I'm at the bank, someone to care for and teach my little Abigail the necessities of this life. January 26, 1883. After a week and a painstaking search, I have found a suitable nanny for my Abby. Thankfully for me, for it is quite difficult raising a child by oneself, especially with a job such as mine. The nanny's name is Annie Tremental. She seems the proper choice. The references are excellent, and a bonus is she's Irish. It feels like I'm back at home. I think I made an excellent choice in her hire. February 1st, 1883. Abby seems to have taken to Annie quite fondly. I see them at play from time to time when I return home. Annie seems quite competent so far, a fair yet firm teacher and companion to my daughter, which is exactly what I asked for. February 8th, 1883. Annie has done such a fine job so far, and with my schedule as busy as it is, I've decided to hire Annie full-time, with room and board within the manor. Her and my little Abby have become quite the unrepeatable pair. Side note, I must direct Annie's attention to my little Abby's frailness as of late. Maybe a little less playing outside and more concentration on her studies, or an extra coat, will do the trick. February 18th, 1883. My fears are beginning to worsen. What was once just a frail look to my daughter has grown into an unexplainable sickness. The finest doctors in New York have seen her. I've spared no expense, but all have come to the same puzzled conclusion of uncertainty. My Abby cannot keep food or drink down. She's become bone-withered and pale, and has lost her mobility, and is now bedridden. My sweet, poor Abby, what is wrong with thee? Side note, last night in my morning status by the fire, as I sipped a glass of fine brandy, I was disturbed by Annie. At first I thought something had happened to my Abby, but Annie said no, everything was fine. Then she smiled at me and put the come hither in my direction. Even in my inebriated state, I put a stop to her advances. She is my employee, and I am her employer, and that's where it ends. I hope it does not persist, for it made me quite uncomfortable, and I haven't the time for such foolishness. February 21st, 1883. My world is darkened, ever much so. First my lovely wife, and now my sweet Abby, has succumbed to her mysterious illness. What cruel life is this? I have dismissed the entirety of my staff, for I must be alone. Editor's note. To complete the backstory on Sir Reginald, this was his last journal entry. He was found the next morning, hanging in his study. His losses too difficult to bear. On to the next family. Agatha Brimsby, socialite. February 28th, 1883. I've been tasked by my husband to find a replacement for our long-serving nanny, Miss Elvira Johnson, who recently passed. Since she had been in advanced age and not as mobile as of late, we thought it best to find a suitable nanny on the younger side, someone who can run around with the younger children. March 1st, 1883. After a long list of interviews from many different agencies, I believe I finally found the perfect nanny. Her name is Annie Tremantle. She's experienced, proper disposition, correct age, and comes highly recommended. She previously worked for Sir Reginald Bartholomew, the wealthy banker, who wrote a lovely letter of recommendation before his untimely demise. A weight of worry has been lifted from my shoulders. I know I've made the proper hire. March 12th, 1883. Things have gone quite swimmingly. The children are in quite the capable hands of Annie. Their needs are met. Leisure and schooling activities are taken care of, allowing me and my husband to keep a clear mind on work and charitable events. We've even expanded her role in the household to cook, with the recent departure of our longtime cook, Mr. Richards. Side note: I must tell Annie to keep a close eye on the twins. They're looking a little peaked. March 20th, 1883. The household seems to be fighting an illness. I hope it not be a fever amongst us. I called Dr. Andrews this morning, and he will be stopping by this afternoon. I also must remember to tell Annie to keep an eye on the freshness of our food deliveries, the produce in particular. Husband said his vegetable soup tasted off last evening. March 25th, 1883. The illness, whatever it may be, is becoming worse. No doctor knows for certain what it may be. My family is becoming frail and weak by the day. The twins are bedridden, and husband is nearly there himself. We've secluded ourselves in our home in the hopes to get better. The staff has left us for the fear of getting sick, all except for Annie. She's continued to take care of us, and even has found recipes for special teas to help us get better. Thank God for Annie. Editor's note: that was the last journal entry from Agatha Brimsby. She and her entire family were found dead in their beds 2 days later. There are reports that people felt sorry for Annie. The nanny was so much love to give, but tragedy always seemed to strike. Sure, there was some in the high-class community that cast a suspicious eye towards her, particularly the police. But with no proof and the mysterious manner of deaths, there was nothing anyone could do, and Annie was soon employed once again. Now, to the next family. Arnold Gaines, shipping magnate. March 30th, 1883. As a widower and father of 2 precocious children, my work life can suffer concerning over their well-being. I have been interviewing nannies for the past several days, and I believe to have finally found one. Her name is Annie Tremantle, and comes highly recommended. While I have received some concerns from a few friends on her hire, I can see no reason not to hire her. 'Tis not her fault, for her previous employer's demises, and each household gave excellent references before they succumbed to their ailments. If she was the cause of such things, I'm sure they would have not done so. I know this was an excellent hire. I feel it in my bones. April 5th, 1883. The children have taken to Annie unlike they have with any other, and thank the Lord for that. My mind can now rest at ease, for I know they are properly taken care of. She is shown to be an excellent teacher, an excellent friend towards the children. April 15th, 1883. Still have no complaints regarding Annie. The children have never been happier. The people who warned me are just a bunch of scared, superstitious fools. This woman is wonderful, who ran into some bad luck. There's so much love inside, and all she wants is to care for others. I admire and feel sorry for her. April 25th, 1883. I must confess, I have grown fond of Miss Tremantle. She paid a visit to my chambers last night after putting the children to bed. I am not ashamed to say we made passionate love. It has been quite some time for me, and her company was very appreciated. May 5th, 1883. With the bond my children have formed with her, and our ever-growing love, I decided to propose to Annie, and thankfully she accepted. We are to be married in a week's time. May 12th, 1883. The wedding was beautiful. I was afraid it might be rough with the children and myself, feeling a tad poorly, but we persevered. Thankfully, Annie is not ill and is taking good care of us. May 15th, 1883. For whatever reason, me and the children's illness is getting worse, not better. The children are declining quite steadily, I'm afraid, and I'm following right behind. Annie, the stalwart that she is taking total care of them. Cooking, distribution of medicines. She's in complete control, and I thank her for it. She's a new bride, after all. Such things shouldn't be asked of her. I just wish those damn doctors knew what was happening to my family. Editor's note. This was the last journal entry for Arnold Gaines. His children died 2 days after this entry, and himself a day after that. Annie became a widow just days after marriage, and became very wealthy. She became the sole beneficiary, just being named to Mr. Gaines' will just days before. This, of course, opened up an official investigation into Annie. There were just many coincidences at this point, and now there was a proper motive: money. The rest of high society shunned her at gatherings while the investigation took place, but she did not care, for she was now rich and was secluded inside her mansion. Eventually, she was done in, however, when the journals of her previous employers were discovered and realized all dots connected to her. She was in complete care of her victims when they succumbed to their illnesses. Then they discovered her journal and found evidence that she poisoned her victims, both written and physical evidence to this effect. Authorities went back and searched the properties where she worked and discovered discarded bottles of arsenic and bottles of rat poison in the sheds and butler pantries of the homes. She was finally arrested September 5th, 1883, and sentenced to hang, which she did 5 days later. A frightening thing was found on her writing desk: a piece of paper, a letter specifically where she posed under a different name, seeking employment as a nanny, along with her references, addressed to the Roosevelt household, who had a young boy named Franklin that needed looked after. Annie could have changed the course of history. Ears. My girlfriend Leah usually sleeps on her side, giving me perfect access to her ears. Carefully, I squeezed in 2 drops of the poison, no more, because I want the process of hearing loss to be very gradual, over months. The poison is working. I know by how loud she is turning up the music she adores so much. She mentioned needing to see a doctor today. She has been having to ask her colleagues to repeat themselves louder and louder. There is nothing the doctors can do at this stage. Her hearing loss is unsalvageable, and my clever poison undetectable. Within a few weeks at most, she will be completely deaf. I go back to learning sign language. Amazing what you can learn online for free I need to be ready to support my darling Leah like the good boyfriend I am. Is it so wrong to want to be the main source of joy in your partner's life? When I look at her face, grimacing in time with the shite she calls music, it feels like a dagger twisting in my heart. And honestly, if Leah's taste in music is so low, better she lose her goddamn hearing. God knows I tried to elevate her. I didn't arrive lightly at this decision. I put on Moonlight Sonata, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, easy gateways into classical. She waited patiently for me to explain why they were so great. Then she said, "Claude, you're such a snob. The great thing about music, people enjoy what they do. I don't get why it bothers you so much. I mean, it's not like I'm listening to Ed Sheeran or Katy Perry. Classic rock is great. Everyone knows that. The music of the 90s, it was everywhere. Didn't you listen to Guns N' Roses back in the day?" I felt furious, but I controlled it. I laughed lightheartedly. "Axl Rose? Oh, Leah, don't tell me you carry a torch for that fat freak. He's a violent asshole. All those rock gods were just a bunch of violent pedos. I thought you were a feminist." She frowned. "I don't have a crush on Axl Rose, and it's actually quite unfeminist to fat shame. And I never said I approve of their lifestyle. I just like their songs." I think that puts you in a hypocritical position." I tried to keep my bantering tone. "Let's not fight over music, Claude. It's so silly. And thankfully the good Lord gave us headphones, so we don't need to make each other miserable." And yet despite headphones, it bothered me, watching her work out, prance around the kitchen, paint her nails knowing she was listening to that music, watching her move her lips and throw her head back and sway from side to side to music that I was not part of. If she won't listen to music with me, insisting on being so uncultured, obviously, she doesn't deserve to have hearing at all. I landed my dream job on my favorite TV show, but my boss is a nightmare. The red light flashed, and we were live on air. Belinda forced out her happy homemaker smile, a dramatic departure from the surly Medusa I had just met backstage. "Well, hello, my lovelies," Belinda gushed, gesturing towards me. "Today, I'd like to introduce Willa, my new assistant. How about some applause?" The crowd erupted into cheers. Belinda was charming on air, chatting with me like we were old pals. But once those cameras turned off, Belinda's smile vanished faster than a pizza after a Miss America pageant. Working with Belinda was nothing like I imagined. Belinda was my idol growing up, and I dreamed of working with her one day, baking gluten-free brownies and becoming best pals. But childhood dreams die hard. I landed the job last year, and I couldn't believe I would be working with Belinda on her hit TV show. My first day, I arrived early for hair and makeup, and Rolf gave me a chic hairdo. He admired his work. "You look effing fabulous." I beamed. But Belinda hated it. I stood to greet her, but she smiled thinly and gave me a disapproving once-over. "I guess that will do," she sighed, and motioned for me to follow her on stage. What did I do? That would become the perennial question as long as I worked for Belinda. She was impossible to please, and she controlled the room with her dismissive vibes and icy stares. On air, she was a peach, but another Belinda emerged backstage. Belinda criticized my hair and makeup, even though they were professionally done, And as I befriended more of the crew, her fault-finding worsened. One day, I felt especially cute in a rose silk dress, but Belinda snarled, "You look like a 2-cent tramp." Later, I cried backstage to Helen, the makeup artist. "What's wrong with it?" Helen sighed. "She's an effing bitch, honey. She's a grade A narcissist who can't share the spotlight. Narcissists are power-hungry attention whores who have to claim center stage, always. Steal that spotlight for a second, and they panic, or play victim." "But I don't get it." "Because you're not toxic, and people actually like you, whereas they just tolerate her." Then Helen leaned closer. "Want my advice? One word. Almonds." My eyes widened, curious, but Belinda interrupted, pointing to me. "Helen, please fix her. She can't go on camera like that." I fumed. That bitch. Then, after the show, Belinda opened a yogurt, and I recalled Helen's advice. Almonds. But I had to think fast. "Someone was looking for you in the office," I lied. Then after Belinda left, I crushed almonds into powder and mixed it into her yogurt, having no idea what would happen. Belinda returned later and continued eating the yogurt, and suddenly her eyes popped. She clutched her throat and toppled over. I can't breathe," she squealed as the life faded from her eyes. She reached up, begging for mercy, but all I had for her were 2 words. Burn, bitch. Am I the asshole to poison my boyfriend's game night buddies? I think a batch of poison cookies would be the best way. My boyfriend Rob is gluten-free, but the others will scarf them down. It would be a nice gesture. I accidentally saw Mick's text to Rob about Yoko. I know he means me. Mangy fat bastard. Reddit. I am sure once you hear my side of the story, you will agree that I am not Yoko, and only doing the best thing for our relationship and future together. I love Rob so much. I want to be with him forever and ever. And believe me, I am not a possessive, demanding girlfriend. I understand it's healthy to have different hobbies and interests and friends. That's all good. I have my own hobby, too, that I don't share with Rob. Baking, thanks to Rob's allergies, and poisons which disappear from the human system soon after consumption, leaving no trace. But these gaming night buddies, you have to believe me when I say that even if our relationship doesn't last, it's for Rob's good to be rid of them. I was actually invited to join. "You're always more than welcome," declared Rob. "We even have other females at the table." Well, I don't know if you could call that freak Allison a female. She has the complexion and poise of a desperate yet malicious seahorse. But yes, fine, sure, whatever. I am not one of those weirdos who are judgmental about gaming. I am partial to a round of Bejeweled for de-stressing. I spent a good part of the lockdowns annihilating other players online on Ticket to Ride, and I have fond memories of Plants vs. Zombies. In fact, sometimes I still just play the music to calm myself. But I will tell you, I have never laid eyes on such an unpleasant, obsessive, just plain horrible, no-good people as this lot, sitting around in Mick's basement for hours every Sunday, gaming. For one thing, they have these insider jokes about their games that need an actual historical manual to explain them, and then it makes me cringe so hard that my teeth actually shatter. Mick and Allison do this stupid running commentary on whatever game they're playing in silly fake voices, which makes me want to die, and also is super distracting from the game, although Rob thinks it is the most hilarious thing ever. Then there's Brett, who is chronically sick and only lives for these game nights. I am not sure what his sickness is, but he has a foul smell, and that Rob comes back absolutely reeking, which seems to linger throughout the week. Like, literally, I'm nauseous all week. Oh, and how can I forget the horny, gross John? I will spare you the details of his behavior. I am sure you will agree that I am not the asshole here, and by ridding the world of this horrible group, I am doing us all a favor. The berries are poisonous. I was walking towards the old railroad tracks. I had my backpack and camera case. I had been trying out photography and wanted to get some shots of the now barren wasteland of abandoned trains. I wanted to take the shortcut through the woods, going the usual route I take often. I slipped through the pried open bars of the metal fence, pulling my backpack through once I got inside. The forest was the calmest place I knew, aside from the occasional group of goth emos hanging out, but even they seemed pretty chill. Sometimes I would close my eyes and stand there, listening to the trees, gliding along with the sway of the breeze. I started making my way through, attempting to avoid stinging nettles and thorns from bushes. I failed a few times. I was about a quarter way onto the route I need to take in order to get to the railroad tracks when I see something. Someone. At first, seeing someone made me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone to be this far in alone, but I guess I was doing the same thing, and maybe they are just heading somewhere. Then I noticed the crooked figure of the person, bent over and shriveled. The person was wearing what looked like a burlap sack, designed to look like what must have been a dress. As I got closer, I realized this person was actually an old woman. She seemed to be picking berries. I do not have a lot of knowledge when it comes to berries, but I knew this specific species, black bryony, was pretty poisonous, and I became worried once I saw she was placing them in a wooden basket. I decided to call out to her. "Hey, you know those berries are poisonous, right?" She continued to pick the berries. I figured as she was old, her hearing was just poor, so I decided to walk closer and call out again. "Miss, those berries are poisonous. You're gonna get sick if you eat them." She seemed to not hear me once more. I was getting slightly annoyed at this point, but I wasn't just going to walk away from a potentially confused, frail old lady who is going to go bake a poisonous pie. I'm sure these types of berries didn't even taste good anyway. I walked up to her and gently tapped her back, without even glancing towards me. Still continuing to pick the berries, I hear her grumble out a small, "What?" Something feels wrong. I instantly thought two things. One, she might have dementia or something similar, and her family could possibly be looking for her right this moment. And two, the blood dripping down her fingers from where she had carelessly picked through thorn bushes looked very painful. Are you okay? Your hands look pretty bad." I found myself stuttering. "What do you want from me?" The old lady whipped around to face me, screaming. I jumped back in fear as she grabbed my arm, smearing her own fresh blood all over it. Her grip was so much stronger than it should have been, as her nails started to pierce my skin. "Stop! Let go of me! Let go! Get off of me!" I started to shout over her abnormally low-pitched screaming. It sounded so unnatural, like a mix between a grown man and a little girl. Her eyes started to roll into the back of her head, and foam began trailing from her mouth. She stopped screaming and started talking faster than what I thought was humanly possible. "How could you talk to me? How dare you speak to me? Never open your mouth again, I say. You disgusting little vermin. You dirt beneath my feet. You may no longer squeal or scream. Your voice is mine. For you are a foul burden on my back. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?" She let go of my arm and started to convulse on the floor. The foam from her mouth spread across the forest floor, berries scattered all around. Her body started to deteriorate before my eyes. Her skin peeled back, and her muscles rotted away, all writhing the space of what must have been 2 minutes max. I tumbled back in shock. I wanted to get out of this woods as soon as possible. I was unable to comprehend what had just unfolded before my eyes. I limped back the way I came, finally reaching the metal gate again. The second I made my way through, I broke out into a sprint. I needed to get home. I got back to my house within 10 minutes, not stopping once the entire time. I opened the door, desperate to talk to my mom about what had just happened. I was ready to call the police. I walked into the kitchen and saw her. She turned around and instantly started to scream. "Oh God, James! What has happened? Where is your mouth? Oh God, James, are you okay?" I started to freak out and began to ask what is she talking about, when I realized I couldn't. I was unable to speak. I started to feel my face, realizing where my mouth should be is completely smooth, like a mask of skin was covering it, silencing me. I rushed into the bathroom and switched on the light, and sure enough, my mouth was gone. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.